Hey, Alex Berman here from Experiment 27. We just hit 1,000 subs, so thank you for everyone that subscribed. You guys are the best. I'm going to have a gift for you coming soon, so keep watching the videos. Today, I wanted to talk about podcasts. I've been on dozens of podcasts, probably over 50 podcasts, including some of the top ones, Entrepreneur on Fire, Rocketship.fm, The Top with Nathan Lodka, and podcasts are very important for your business. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get on them. And first, I want to show you why they're important. So here's an email from a guy that became a client of ours. Hey, Alex, your interview with Nathan Lodka was really inspiring, especially how you guys are leading the cold email lead gen market and 100% bootstrapped. So he heard the podcast, watched a bunch of the videos, and then eventually turned into a client on retainer with Experiment 27. And this is just a small example. I get 2 to 3 emails like this every single day from podcasts that I recorded months ago. So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can do the exact same thing after this.
Now let's chat with today's featured guest, Alex Berman.
Top Tribe, good morning. Our guest today is Alex Berman.
Welcome to the Rocket Ship Podcast. I'm Matt Goldman.
And I'm Joelle Goldman. Today we talked with Alex Berman.
Part 1, how to find podcasts. So there are 2 ways you can find podcasts to be on. One is targeting the high-profile podcasts in your industry, and then the other one is going after the new and noteworthy podcasts. I recommend doing both strategies simultaneously because the more podcast interviews you have under your belt, the easier it's going to be for you to actually sell people on the podcast itself. So in order to get the list of most popular podcasts, I recommend using a tool like Fancy Hands. I already had them do the analysis on the most popular podcasts for startup founders and business owners to listen to, and here's the list. I will post this as a Google Doc linking from this video. Also, links to everything else mentioned are going to be in the comment box below. So those are the top podcasts, and what happens is if you reach out to these are also the most competitive, so you might not hear back right away and they're going to be longer on the cycle of getting you booked. But these are the ones that are going to stick around for months at a time. And in my experience, these are most of the ones that are going to actually send you leads. However, there's a whole nother side of podcast, and that are the tiny podcasts where you still might get a lead or 2, but you're definitely still going to get a backlink to your site for SEO and a lot of practice interviewing and build a relationship with the podcast host, which in my experience has always turned out pretty well. So in order to find those new and noteworthies, I recommend going and hiring a freelancer on Upwork. So that's upwork.com. And here's the exact script I used to hire my 2 lead generators. We're looking for someone to do online research to find a list of companies in a specified area. You'll be given a list of research outlets in a category, and will be asked to fill information into a Google Doc spreadsheet, excellent English. In order to be considered, you must include the phrase, I love researching startups. So the only thing you need to know about Upwork here is always include something like this as a test. So basically what this does is you'll get a bunch of applicants to your Upwork job, but if they don't have I love researching startups or whatever phrase you decide to put in to your profile, if they don't have that in there, you can just immediately throw them out, and that gets rid of people that don't follow the rules off the bat. The other thing I like to do is just hire a bunch of people and then see which ones do best. As you see here, we've got a couple on trial for like $5, and then some of them work really well, and then we end up spending like $200 or whatever the price is. Hourly rates on Upwork are very low. So from that post, I hired 2 freelancers. Here are the 2 if you want to reach out and steal them. And once I hired them, this is the video that I showed them to train them on how to scrape new and noteworthy. Hey, okay, so what we're doing is we're going over to iTunes. You'll go over to the podcast store. Basically in categories, you want to go to business. And starting from new and noteworthy, basically click see all. And what we're doing is putting all of these new and noteworthy podcasts into this doc here. So I'll link to that whole video in the description, and you can just forward that directly to your Upwork people, and it'll train them on how to mine for podcasts in the business niche, or really in whatever niche you want to look into. I've had the most success looking in the new and noteworthy for business podcasts. And you can have your freelancers fill out a doc like this. So once you have a list of leads, green in here is the ones that I reached out to. white are the ones that I didn't reach out to, because what I like to do is before all outreach, as you've seen in a bunch of previous videos, I want to make sure that each podcast is actually a good fit. So I'll listen to like 2 or 3 minutes, or at the very minimum, read the description. So for instance, I don't reach out to real estate podcasts because we're not targeting real estate, but I'll reach out to Java Logs or Side Hustle Show or anything about entrepreneurship. So this is our entire list. Part 2, sending the email. So now that you have this huge list of podcasts, how do you pitch them in a way that's going to get them to have you on the show? Well, I'll show you right now. So here's an exact email that I've used to book a podcast in the past. This is the same template that I used for every podcast that I was on, including the big ones like Entrepreneur on Fire. Room for another interview. Hey Kevin, just came across the podcast on New and Noteworthy and went through the Swift episode. Love what you're doing and can't wait to see where this goes. So this is a custom first line following a lot of the rules of cold emailing. How did you find them? Did you go through an episode, and what did you like about it? Then I had a call out to who I was. This was when I was doing most of the podcast. I was with InspireBeats still. So I'm head of growth for a company called InspireBeats. We do fully managed sales and lead gen for B2B. Naturally, we're trying to get the word out. Since we target a similar group, I think it would be quite interesting for your audience to hear some of these insights. And then these 3 bullet points are custom for each podcast that we pitch. So how we hire and vet candidates, how we use cold emails for our recruiter clients to find interested companies, including email scripts and the exact targeting. So these 2 pitches are for a recruitment and HR podcast. For a sales podcast, it might be what we learned sending a million cold emails, or which subject lines get opened, anything that's going to be interesting. And for your niche, listen to like 5 or 6 minutes of their podcast to try to get a feel for what it's about. That's if you already listen to podcasts. If you don't listen to podcasts, listen to like 4 or 5 episodes in total, just so you can get a feel for what a podcast is. And then think about your story and pitch 3 bullet points, 3 different things that their audience might get from an interview with you. Then last one, does that sound interesting? Happy to workshop some ideas as well. Thanks, Alex. This email right here has about a 30% interview book rate. So for every 100 emails we send out, we're getting 30 interviews on the calendar with podcasts. So feel free to use this, change up the words, make it your own, but this basic structure is going to work for you. Once you book the podcast, in terms of email sequencing, what you'll do is you'll send this one out. You can use a mail merge or use any of the systems that we talk about in all these other cold emailing videos to send these out and to follow up. Same follow-up strategies apply. Follow up a few days later with just, hey, I hope this didn't get buried. And usually I just stop there. For the bigger podcasts, so like for Entrepreneur on Fire, I sent out this email, and then like a month later, I sent another email to John Lee Dumas just hyping up my company. Like, hey, John, since we last talked, our company's grown by X%. We brought on like 4 new employees. Super pumped to share this story with your audience. And that was how we booked. So once you get these podcast interviews on the calendar, that brings us to part 3, prep for the podcast. It's important to prepare and have everything mapped out. Some people are good off the cuff, but I find that if I have some bullet points of the topics I want to hit, it always leads to a more successful podcast. And we've had a lot of really good feedback from the podcast hosts about our interviews being some of the best. And it's all because of this prep up front that I'm about to show you. So here's the exact screen I was looking at when I was on the Brian Burns podcast, Brutal Truth About Selling. So I had a reminder to myself that I needed to pitch InspireBeats. So I needed to actually sell the company I was on for scaling and testing. I had a success story from one of our clients outlined here that I could hit with bullet points. I had the actual email that I used to get on podcasts here, because sometimes I would reference this email. And here's another example of that script that we used. Notice it's the exact same script with the same subject line. This one just has a PS at the bottom. And then I had all the bullet points I was going to hit throughout the podcast. So subject lines matter, personalized subject line, what leads to low open rate, misleading subject lines are terrible, subject line with introductions, and then a breakdown of each one. I wasn't reading this word for word on the podcast, but by having it written out, I could basically do a podcast in any mind state. So, sometimes a podcast host will want you to hop on at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I wouldn't have to worry about getting my mind going or having a bunch of coffee because all the points are right here. This is also really good if you're living in different time zones. So to create one for yourself, think about the thing you're pitching and map out all the points that you want users to take away. So all the value you want to add in the podcast, if you put it in this doc, you'll be able to reference it, and you'll be able to do it naturally after a little bit of practice. My first ever podcast interview was super awkward, super low quality, but we got better over time. And actually, I'll play you a clip of my first podcast interview right now.
Yeah, so we work with a lot of agencies, and we basically run the predictable revenue model, which is cold emailing, cold calling, and all that stuff to get them clients.
And now compare that to the answers I was giving on Entrepreneur on Fire.
Sure. So InspireBeats offers two services. One is lead generation, where we basically have a team that can go out and find companies that would be a good fit for other companies. And we basically sell the lists. The other thing we do is email outreach, which is from those lists, we have a team of Americans that will sit down and actually write customized cold emails to each one of those people to pitch them on services, pitch them on webinars, any sort of business thing to gain awareness, and then also to book sales demos.
So that's the ultimate guide to getting on podcasts. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Feel free to implement. Let me know how it goes in the comments. Like this video if you want to encourage this type of content. Subscribe to this channel for more of these videos. And if you need support for your agency marketing, check out experiment27.co. Thanks.